Welcome to the Brother Henry and You Show. I am your host, Henry Harris. Welcome to the Brother Henry and You Show. I am your host, Henry Harris. Today we have an amazing topic, and I'm here with my dear friend, Taron Harris. And Taron, what an honor it is to have you on the program tonight.
Thank you so much, and I'm glad to be here with you too.
Several weeks ago, I had reached out to Taron because I had this thought that came in my mind in reference not only to society, but adapting to the new, adapting to today's society. Because as we all know, things are changing, and we can look around us, and it is obvious, Taryn, that things are changing. Everything from politics to religion
Yes.
to music, um,
Yeah.
and so much more that society has to offer today. So change
Abs-
change is one constant in life. I mean, even when you don't want things to change, things are going to keep changing. Things are going to keep evolving and adapting. And adapting to that change can be a challenge to many of us, especially if we're not accustomed or used to change. I don't know
That's
about
right.
you, but I like change, but at the same time, there's a part of me that's if something has been a certain way for a long time, I'll be honest, I really don't like change. In
No.
that as
Mm-mm.
like but if there's something that's always that I'm familiar with, and then all of a sudden it changes. Now some change is good, and some change I'll go along with. But if there's something
That's
I've
right.
always been accustomed to,
Yeah.
I'm not trying to adapt adapt to that. So let's face it. Does anything really stay the same in today's society? And I believe it is important to know how to adapt to change, and for some of us, even to navigate through it. So, before we get into these questions, many people may be asking, what do you mean by adapt? What does that word mean? Adapt means to make something suitable for a new use or purpose. It means to modify. The word adapt means to kind of like make adjustments, becoming adjusted to new conditions, maybe a new belief system, a new way of being, a new way of living. And today, once again, we're joined with my friend Taryn Harris to discuss how certain things have changed in our society today and what can we do to adapt to it. So, Taryn, we'll kind of like dialogue back and forth through some of these questions. But the first question is, why is it important to adapt to change? And remember, the word adapt means to adjust. Uh,
That's right.
if it's a good change now, like I said, there's some changes that are happening. I'm not really for it. I'm not really trying to adapt towards it.
No.
Um, but if it is if it is good change and if it'll benefit me, you know, why is it important to do
That's right.
that?
Yeah. Yeah. Henry, and like I said, I'm glad to be here with you tonight. To talk about this because this is something that we've been dealing with, particularly over these last 2 years. With this pandemic, some folks call it plandemic. Yeah, because it was planned, so to speak, I
Yeah,
guess.
yeah.
But it has really brought about a bunch of changes that we never would have imagined. I
We
mean,
didn't, Taryn, even like the year two, when was the pandemic started? Late 2019.
yeah, that's right, going
I
into
mean,
2020.
even that year of 2019, like coming in, we nobody thought about we're being a pandemic like in what's that fall.
No, not at all. I mean, because we've been kind of hearing about things on the news, but we really didn't pay any attention. I know I
Yeah.
did. And shoot, then what made me started paying close attention to it was when when Jimmy Fallon had to get rid of his audience in the studio, and then they went to talking about it on the talk on CBS,
Hmm.
and they had to let their audience go, and next thing everything started shutting down. I said, oh man. And I ended up being off work for because this is spring break here in West Memphis this
Hmm.
week, and I was off all during spring break, and then after that, and I was only working for 2 days a week for the remainder of the school year.
Hmm.
Yep, I said, shoot, this kind of seems like semi-retirement here.
Yeah. So, I know we're talking about the pandemic. We're gonna go to the next question. You know, for example, like even with the pandemic, as what you're talking about, there's some things, like I said, that we don't want to adjust to. We don't want to go along with that change. And to be honest, if you think about the pandemic, what were some of the things that were implemented that we could no longer do? We could social distance. Like you said, there were certain TV shows that got rid of their audiences. Um,
Mm-hmm.
you couldn't go around your fat. Some people did it anyway,
Yeah.
but it was still a big change, though. You know, as far as um, washing your hand. I mean, we know that's elementary stuff that we should be doing anyway. But it was a
Absolutely.
big, wearing a mask. I mean,
Oh, yes, yes.
that's a big change. Nobody really, and I know I'm not comfortable with it, wearing a mask everywhere I go. I'm not even used to that. As a matter of fact, um, I think the last pandemic was what the Spanish flu back in the early
Yeah, back
1900s.
that's right. Uh-huh.
So 100 years later, I mean, did we ever think that we would be where we're at today? I'm sure they had to make changes. The good thing about where we're at today, since we're talking about change, we have certain things to our disposal that they didn't have then.
That's
I
right.
mean,
Sure do.
even though they lost quite a few people to that flu, and we've lost several to COVID. And if you're watching and you've lost someone to COVID or during this
Hmm.
pandemic, you have our condolences. So I think it's important to change, to adapt to change, but I think it's also important to kind of investigate what that change is.
It
Because
is.
I'm a firm believer that all change is not always good change.
No, it's not.
What's your thoughts about that?
Oh, I agree, Henry. I mean, because sometimes and I'm like this, change should not happen all at once.
Yeah.
It should be introduced
Mhm.
in little spurts, here and there, just slowly bring about change. And the people whom the changes will involve should be given an opportunity to be prepared for these upcoming changes. Don't just thrust them into it all of a sudden. I mean, because they're not going to be able to handle it, but kind of, slowly introduce new things and
Yeah.
let them see how they react to that. Then, if the reaction is pretty good, then maybe introduce another little change, but
Yeah.
just keep it minor.
Yeah. And I think that's what makes it so complicated is that people try to rush into change. You know,
Yeah.
let, Karen, let's talk about moving.
Okay.
Before I moved to Springfield, Missouri, I did my homework. I did some investigation. The crime
Yeah.
rate, um, my employment. You know, was that a big change for me? Yes, because where I lived, I was there for 10 years. Did I want to
Okay.
move? No, because I was comfortable where I was at. So
Yeah.
I had to slowly but surely, as you said, kind of like work. I knew I wanted to move. I had to work my way into it. And as I started to get more comfortable, I had to adapt to that change. Um,
Yeah,
and it was a good change for me. I mean, since moving here, I've made more. My daughter and I, we like it here. So some change
that's
is
good.
good. So
Yeah.
here's my next question. I really like this one here, and we may be on this one for I don't know how long, but um, what are some things in society that has changed? Now we've already talked about the pandemic, but
Mhm.
I'm gonna name just a few things here. Uh, Number one, I have music. Now let's talk about music.
Yes.
How has music? I
Yes.
really think music has changed drastically these days.
Oh yes, I mean because and I'm glad you mentioned music too, Henry, because of course let's see the Grammy Awards. I think have they? I think has CBS already aired the Grammys? Or should be coming up pretty
Yeah.
soon. Anyway, I watched part of the Grammys last year,
Hmm.
and as I was watching it, it sort of I thought about in the years past, especially like we were growing up, there were so many musical artists featured on there whom we grew up with. We knew their songs and everything, but now, if I tune in to the Grammys, there's nobody on there that I really know
Yeah.
because I mean none of those people I grew up with, and and so and the songs, I mean, they're just ratchet. I mean, I don't even want to go into some of the stuff that I mean, I can go back to last year and think about all of what they did on there. And I said, I can't see how CBS even allowed this. But I mean, but it's something that young folk like. These
Yeah.
young people, they like all this stuff.
The
But
new generation, the era. You were born in what, 79?
yes,
I was born in 87, so that's about shy of 10 years. Um, so
yeah,
the era where I came up in and where you came up in, the music just tasted different, but it was a good taste though.
yes, it was.
I remember that song you posted. I got work to do. All that type. It's like
The
Luther Van.
Isley Brothers.
Yeah, the Isaac brother, Luther Vandross. Just you're very known for doing your little video things, and you put. I've never known you to put anything like the new generation of music. You always go back to the 70s and 80s. The music back then has meaning. Like for me today, it's hard for me to adapt to pop it and do it. And she's of this and these she's of that. And she lay her this way and do her this way. And like it's like a robber that book about the rock. It's like, what the world are they
Yeah.
talking about?
Oh man, it's a shame.
It don't even make sense. Now there's some things I still do like for example, there are still
Mhm.
some legends like
Mhm.
Snoop Dogg.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
that's right.
like he's really good. Like he's true to himself. I like him. I
Yeah,
knew about him, but I became more invested in him after the Super Bowl. I started listening to a lot of his music that I didn't even know that he
yeah,
wrote. And so I like
yeah.
that Ice Cube. Um,
Hmm.
but they're just old songs, back then that had meaning and you can actually feel the music.
Sure.
What's that one rapper that sung years ago? I don't know if I think he's a rapper. Keith Sweat. I don't know if you remember him.
Yeah, well, he's an R&B singer.
Yeah, or he wrote that song Nobody.
Yeah.
Who can love you like me? No, but that song got a lot of people pregnant too, by the way.
Yes,
Uh,
it did. It most certainly did in the
but just
90s.
think about this. Think about, and I want you to talk about some different groups that you could think of. Think about Boys to Men.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
mean,
yeah,
it's
Bone
like
Thugs and Harmony and what's the name? Lauren Hill and all them folk and
Luther
shoot.
Vandross.
Yeah, Erica Badu and I mean it's so many of them. Faith Evans and Mary J. Blige, and I mean,
Yeah.
the list goes on and on. You
Yeah.
know, that I grew up with, like junior high and high school and
Hmm.
stuff. And all of my classmates, like we're all in our 40s now, so a lot of my classmates, got kids that's in school now that's coming up. Now they're into this new stuff,
The
but
new.
see, all of us, we're into the stuff back there.
Hmm.
And man, I mean, it's just a big difference.
It is a big difference. And
Yeah.
and I tell you what, I've been called an old soul because I'm not really into all the new stuff. But you see, my
Hmm.
my my father growing up was I don't know if you're familiar with this term. He was a disc jockey. Um,
Oh yeah, DJ, yeah.
yeah, he used to travel all over and play music like at different parties and stuff. So that's how I
Okay.
became familiar with Michael Jackson. All these artists. And
That's
years later, it makes you feel a different um kind of way. Like listen to that,
mhm.
it brings back memories.
It does. It sure
And
does.
just so everyone is watching, Taryn and I, we have good hearts. We're not coming against any. If you like the boom, ba da bang, da da dang, ba da boom. If you like all the new stuff, or and
Mhm.
if you like all that, we're not saying that it's wrong. It's just that we came
That's
up in the
right.
era. And for me, I can't relate to you, Ted, but for me, it's hard to adjust to songs today, especially when it demeans people and
Oh yes.
every word is a cuss word in it. And I don't think there's nothing wrong with that, but I'm just saying, but every other word is like,
Uh,
like just so much profanity, and I'm like,
yeah.
people feel like today in today's culture that we have to demean women, we have to demean men,
Mm,
we have to talk about sex in between every lyric. It's like in
mm,
order to reach people. But back then, you in the late '70s, you coming up in the '80s, and I was like in the late '80s going into the '90s. You
yeah.
rather ever heard stuff like what's that one guy Marvin Gaye,
Yeah. That's
uh,
right.
sexual healing.
Yeah.
Like even though that was of a sexual nature, it wasn't like
Mhm.
derogatory or talking
No.
about women's private parts, or
Mm-mm.
it just had meaning to it. So how do you feel when it comes to when somebody tells you, "Do you like this music?" and you don't like it? Like, how do you respond to someone without hurting their feelings and saying, if that's for you, that's for you, but I'm not there yet. I'm not, and they may be great. They may be great, but
That's
for
right.
me,
That's right. Yep. I mean, uh, if I meet somebody like that, and they perhaps maybe younger than me, that's into that kind of stuff. I mean, I'm not gonna degrade them or what they're listening to by telling them, "Ugh, you need to turn that mess off." I mean, I'm not gonna do that if that's what they like,
hmm
But I, at the same time, don't get on me if I'm listening to some blues or if I'm listening to some R&B or anything old school that I'm familiar with, because everybody's taste is different,
hmm
and like on particularly on my mother's side, uh her parents, my grandparents, they were like very old school. And so they were like from way back. And so all they mostly did listen to was a lot of blues and
BB King,
soul. Yeah, BB King
Johnny
and
Taylor.
yeah, that's right. Howlin' Wolf, Muddy Waters, and Bobby Blue Bland, all them folks.
Who
So I
who's that
mean,
group?
and
Who's that group the other night that you talked about? The Floaters.
yeah, we was talking about that last night, and one of the ladies in the group, she was talking about how that song "Float On" that they had.
Float,
Oh, it used to
float
get her all worked up.
on, float
Yeah,
on. I remember that song.
yeah, and I was telling them about how,
Take my hand. I'm sorry.
yeah,
Hey,
it was a good song.
Taryn, people that's watching, they can relate to us. They know they like that type of music.
Yeah, they do. And not only were the lyrics good, but their style was nice. I mean, the
Yeah.
way they dressed,
Yeah.
performers,
And
they got ready to come out on stage. They were dressed to the nines, like the
Mhm.
OJs and
Temptations.
Temptations,
Yep.
all of them folk. They were clean
Hmm.
because they knew that people were paying money to come and see them.
And they were ready too.
Yeah, they were ready.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's the thing. If you expect people to pay some good money to come and watch you perform, why are you gonna come out there looking like just jumped out the toes hammer?
Yeah. I tell you,
Dude.
people, people do that. That's why I say, for me, it's hard to adapt to the new music today, and some of could be good, but I'm just into the older stuff, like you are. Now let's talk about dating. I think dating has changed. I wouldn't even say in the last 5 years. I would say years ago compared to today. And Terry, let's just admit it. It's just not the same anymore.
It's nowhere near the same, Henry. It's not.
We talked
I
about this.
mean,
We talked about this on the phone a few
we
days
sure
ago.
did.
So, what's your thoughts about dating? See, for me, it would be hard to adapt to how. I guess we can start with how do people date today compared to years ago? Because today there are apps.
Yeah.
It's for me, it's almost like a joke. I've tried it
Oh,
a few
yes.
times, and it's like some of the stuff I hear some of them say. Like I said, I got a bad
Mm-hmm.
on the profile. It'll say when I was on there, like I got a bad attitude. I'm loudmouth. I'm this. I'm like, you think that's really gonna pull a guy in?
No,
Or if a woman read a man's profile that says I'm hardcore, I'm this, I'm that, I'm mean, I'm like, see,
no.
years ago I don't remember. Years ago I don't remember that, and there wasn't even no such thing as um. Was there even a dating app back in the late '80s or '90s? There was no Facebook. Facebook wasn't even around.
Dating has definitely changed. I mean, to be honest with you, I don't even think that people date anymore.
Oh,
Basically,
what do you mean by what do you mean by
this is more of a,
hookup?
yeah, that's all. Yeah, they just hook up. That's it. And there are apps online for that too,
There
by
they
the way.
are. They are. But there was
Mhm.
but Terry coming up, and I know there are people that are older than us, but
Yeah,
back in the day, people would meet at church or at a grocery
they
store
do.
or at a
Mhm.
bar. It's
Yeah.
easy access today as it relates to dating. There's so much easy access in regards to like going on a date with
Mhm.
someone. And the reality of it is, I've always been skeptical of you really don't know who the other person is behind that picture.
No, you don't. You really don't.
I mean,
Mm-mm.
so it's kind of, in so many ways, it's kind of scary. But
Yeah.
I believe dating has changed, and I think dating these days, I don't know if I would even call it dating because you
No,
think of dating like okay, getting acquainted with someone,
that's
getting to
right.
know someone, maybe going to the movies, going for a walk.
Yeah,
These days
that's
is
right.
these days is Netflix, and you know what else after
That's
that.
right. Yeah.
So I don't know why they even call it dating. Um, so I feel like compared to now to the way things were years ago, that's another thing I would find hard to adapt to is the way people's perception of dating. And if they were to ask me to adapt to it, it'd be hard to. If your definition of dating is just going straight to the bedroom, uh, I can't go along with that change.
No, me neither. Mm-mm.
I can't.
Nah, I mean, mm-mm. I can't either.
I know you say you went on a date several years back and it didn't turn out the way that you thought it would.
Yeah, yeah, I tell you, Henry, it was a very miserable experience, and the worst thing about it was, see, the lady I went out with, we actually worked together at that time,
Hmm.
and that was mistake number one right there. You
Oh
know,
yeah, I learned yeah.
mm-mm.
Never
And
date a coworker.
no, and see, the thing is, I wasn't interested in her at all. She was interested in me.
Oh
So
really?
she kind of, yeah, she kind of forced her way in to me. And because I wasn't studying her. and and so I just went along with it, just to see what would happen. But it just wasn't in my best interest at all to go that route with her.
Yeah. Yeah, so I tell you, dating has changed. Marriage is that's another thing. Marriage, that's another thing. That's something a lot of people rush into. Is
Yeah.
marriage, or it's what everybody's doing. Well, I feel like marriage is for someone. It may not be for everyone. So
No, it's not.
let's talk about TV shows. Guess what I was watching last night?
What would you watch?
Family Matters.
Oh, okay.
Let's talk about TV shows, how that has changed in society. We can be honest, the shows that we see today, they're not all bad, but
No.
the older shows like Good Times, Sanford and Son, The Jeffersons, Family Matters, The Bill Cosby Show, all those good shows back then had a message in them. They all had a story in them.
Yeah, they did. They sure did.
Let's talk about that, and let's even talk about some cartoons and stuff. That I mean that I was raised up on. I remember every Saturday morning I used to watch the Flintstones. I look forward to that every Saturday morning. I loved it.
Yeah. I
So
mean,
talk about your experience as far as today compared to your upbringing as it relates to TV shows. Like what TV shows you really don't like. Um, what TV shows you want to watch, what TV shows you used to watch years ago that you still watch.
well, I tell you, you've already named several of them, and there are a bunch of shows that I watched growing up that, most of them have gone off the air since then, or if some of them are still on, they have different hosts on them now, different personalities, and it's just not the same, like game shows and stuff, like for example, Jeopardy. I mean, we all grew up with Alex Trebek.
All of us did.
He was a very classy game show host. And so when he transitioned in 2020, basically that was the
He's
end of
been gone a
Jeopardy.
couple of years.
Yes, he had
Wow.
cancer.
Now they just had one guy off of Full House that
Yeah, Bob Saget.
that passed away.
Yeah,
I was sad to hear that.
I was too. Oh man, that was devastating. And And so, every time these different TV personalities pass on, it's like part of our childhood goes with them,
Yeah.
because it's like they kind of raised us in a sense, but they're like our babysitters, because we watched them every day or every week when they came on, and we always look forward to it,
Hmm.
but I mean, and I know time brings about a change. These folks can't stay on the air forever. There's a season for everything. We know that,
Yeah.
but it doesn't cause you to not miss them when they do disappear from television. And then the guy that used to play on Sesame Street, I can't
Oh
really
yeah, he just
pronounce it.
passed away too. I don't know. I forgot his
Yeah,
name.
but his character Luis on there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And and we grew up with Sesame Street, and I mean, and now they've been on for over 50 years, but the show is not like it was when we were coming along. I mean,
Hmm.
it's more about the little Muppets and stuff on there now,
Yeah.
and they've cut it down from 1 hour to 30 minutes, and I found out too, HBO took over the show. So that's the reason why it's a lot of changes have.
There he is.
I mean, these
There he is.
kids, they're not getting the full effect of Sesame Street like we did.
Hmm.
Oh man.
And also the people of today, like the shows we watched back in the day. Children these days like don't watch it. Like my daughter, she don't watch Sesame Street.
No.
Today is like Mickey Mouse Clubhouse. I mean, she don't watch that stuff no more either. But my daughter don't watch the Flintstones, Bugs Bunny,
No.
Tom and
That's
Jerry
old
show.
fashioned. No, that's old fashioned
But
stuff.
that's the cartoon.
No.
That's the cartoons I was raised up on. These days they got shows, cartoon shows that have a lot of profanity in it. What's the one called The
Yeah.
Family Guy? Yeah, I was
Yeah,
like,
that's
oh
right.
my.
And it was never meant for children. It's actually an adult
Yeah,
cartoon, just like The Simpsons.
yeah,
They were
but
never meant for kids.
kids are gonna watch it because it's
Of
cartoon.
course, because we looked at it. We looked at it.
Yeah. So
Shoot.
I'm grateful for the old TV shows. Some of them are still rerunning, and
Yep.
they should do that because the new generation today needs to know about that. Let's talk about a couple more things. Clothing and attire. The way people dress today compared to years ago is different. You mentioned that earlier about how the things they used to wear back then. If they
Yeah.
look at us today, this is 2022.
Hmm.
Even the dressing has evolved.
Sure has. Yes.
It
I
has
mean,
changed. Bell
yes.
bottoms and stuff like that.
That's
Afros.
right.
Not too many people going around with afros anymore.
No.
And
Mm-mm.
we
No.
talked about cars, like
Yeah.
transportation. My dad used to have a station wagon. Yeah,
Okay.
it was four of us boys, but he used to have a station wagon. And
Hmm.
let's talk about that for a couple of minutes. How has cars changed and evolved over the years? That'll be something I would adapt to. I mean, who wouldn't want a brand new car? I'm thinking about the Price is Right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's another TV show. Taryn, we forgot to mention the Price is Right.
Yeah, that's
Can
right.
you
Because
believe Bob Barker is still living?
yeah, he's 98
He's,
years
he's
old.
woo.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
how you think cars have changed um over the years?
Well, for one thing, I can just use some of the older cars I've had. For example, like I used to drive a Mustang. It was a Ford Mustang. It was a 1990 model,
Mm-hmm.
and that car was the metal that it was built out of. It was mostly hard metal. But now you take these later model Mustangs, built in the last few years, and it's mostly a lot of fiberglass and stuff. And I mean, it's sort of fragile. You can almost take your finger and push a little dent in it with your finger. But the older cars, seemed like they were sturdier in a sense. And also, a lot of cars are becoming more hybrid, and they're moving towards electric vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
And they're talking about by the year 2035 that at least 50% of the vehicles on the road will be electric. And
So when you say electric, that means you don't have to crank it up or nothing like that.
well, you don't have to put gas in them.
What?
Uh-huh, that's right. But they're gonna have to be charged up some kind of way. You got
Yeah.
to have a way to charge them up. And what I'm noticing also is in a lot of these newer cars, you no longer have ignition switches to crank them up.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's a push button, which I don't like. You push that button and that starts it up.
Yeah.
But see, I'm used to putting my key in there, turn switch.
Mm-hmm.
But they're getting away from all that.
Yeah. And have you ever
Uh,
thought, Terry? Have you ever thought what the world would look like? Um, what would the world look like 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 100 years from now? Of course, we won't be here.
no.
As it relates to other stuff that we haven't gotten to, like churches and a religious institution, that's changing. Now a lot of people are going to church, especially since the pandemic. A lot of people
Mm-mm.
just not doing it anymore. Um,
No,
technology has changed.
sure
I don't
has.
remember a cell phone years ago or iPad.
Mm-mm. No, no, not at
Yeah,
all.
and social media. You were speaking about that not too long ago. You know, a lot of people feel like they can't live without it. And the reality of it
Yeah.
is, like many of us coming up, you know, we didn't even know what that was. We had to go outside and play wrestling, or my brothers and I, we were very creative. We would just go pick up some Saturday mornings. We would go pick up some cans and pecans and make some money, just enough to buy some cookies and vinyl
See that?
sausages. So we would go rake yards and stuff
Mm-hmm.
just to get out of the house and go. I miss those days, and there was no Facebook or MySpace or cell phone or all this stuff today. So uh, yeah, things are changing, things are evolving. Um,
Yeah.
my next question is that some change is good, and while other
Mm.
changes are not. Just because
Yeah.
in society has changed doesn't necessarily mean you have to adhere to it, which means just because there's something in society has changed doesn't mean you have to agree with it. I believe
That's
not.
right.
I believe not all change is good change. So, what can you
Yeah.
say to someone who views adapting as agreement? And what I mean by that is, I believe adapting is different than agreement because
Mm-hmm.
adapting relates to adjusting to something. And agreement pretty much means you adhere to it, you believe in it, you're going with it. Um,
Yeah.
so, what would you say to someone who's getting those two words maybe confused? Let's just use racism for example. Who in their right mind is going to adapt with let's make adjustments to racism? Who's going to do
No.
that? Who's going to agree with it? Of course, it's
Well,
not. It's not. Of course, we know racism is not right, no matter who it's towards.
no, no, it's not.
So, and
Mm.
for some people, in some people's minds, they feel like that will never change, and that's sad.
It sure is sad. It,
Some people look at certain races and say it will never change. So you need to adapt to it. In other words, they're telling us, Taryn, or whatever group that's being discriminated against, you might
mm-hmm.
well get used to it. It's gonna always be like this. Well, I don't agree with that. I don't have
No,
to adapt to that change. That's not a good change.
no, it's not. Mm.
So, what's your thoughts?
Well, first of all, Henry, I think that we need to get rid of the word race
Yeah,
because race is like what we do on the track,
yeah,
whatever,
racing.
running.
Yeah.
Yeah, trying to see who's going to make it to the finish line first. That's what a race is.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're talking about different ethnicities, I mean, we are not in a race
Mm-hmm.
with anything. I mean, or anybody. We're all just trying to live life the best we can,
Mm-hmm.
trying to make it from one day to the next.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, when they came up with that terminology, race,
Yeah.
I mean, they did a significant amount of damage to
Mm-hmm.
humanity. I mean, because we shouldn't be categorized that way in the first place. Skin color and all, it wasn't always like that.
Mm-hmm.
If you go further back in history, then you'll see where people were not categorized according to their complexion, but
Yeah.
it was according to the nation from which they came.
Mm-hmm.
But see, we're talking about change, and see, that was some changes that were made back in the 1500s.
Mm-hmm.
During the Spanish Inquisition and
Mm-hmm.
colonialism and all that, and so they had their share of changes too.
Oh yeah.
And it benefited one group of people, and then it was a disadvantage to other groups of people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Wow. That's powerful. So so just like I said, just everyone that's watching, like I said, I believe some changes are good, but there's some changes you don't have to adapt to or agree with or go along to get along. You don't have to. It just depends on what that change is. Um, Taryn, we was talking about, and we're almost done. We was talking about how for people that are elderly, that
Hmm.
are older than us, for some people, it may be hard for them to adapt to new things, even to a new president or a new
Yeah,
grocery store or a new way of doing something. What are your
that's
thoughts?
right.
What are your thoughts on people like that who and it don't have to always be elderly, but what are your thoughts on
No,
people who are pretty much stuck in the past and refuse to catch up with time, so to speak? Like you still see, and I'm not against people who still got flip cell phones or
oh
anything. There's nothing wrong with that, but what's your if it's a good change? What are your thoughts with people that's like, this is the way I am. I'm not going to change, and if they don't, they have a right to.
they
They don't
do. They
have
sure
to.
do. No, they don't. Because I know just as recently as 2012, I had a flip phone. So, and I probably would have still had one if I hadn't dropped that one in the toilet. So, but what I would have to say about that is, we have to be willing to um be flexible.
Yeah.
I mean, flexibility in all things is good. I mean, we don't have to just um take on the whole world at one time, in terms of change and stuff like that. And most of us, you and I, we
Hmm.
don't want all these changes just thrown upon us all at once. But we know that the longer we live, and as time continues to progress,
Hmm.
there are going to be some changes made, and so like for example, I've been with the school district now for going on 15 years.
That's a long
And
time.
yes, and I'm telling you, there is little to nothing um in the district now that is like it was 15 years ago. I mean, a lot has changed, and I
Hmm.
had to be willing to adjust to those changes. And in another 15 years, there will be even more changes. So I have to try to adjust to that. I'm
Because
still there.
because in your first 15 years, of course, it's not going to be the same. Um, what is 15 years from now?
15 years from now, let's see, that'll be
If
2037.
yeah, if you're still in that type of business, is in
Yes.
the year 27, you can't look back and say, well, this is what we did in 2022.
No, no, sure can't.
So
No, shoes. So I mean, time brings about a change. And like I said, some changes are good, they're for the better.
mhm.
But then some changes, not so much. So it all depends on what the change is,
Yeah, and that's what it
you know.
comes down to. And we talked about a lot of things like music, dating, clothing, churches, technology, and there are other stuff too. You know, in the comment section, those who are watching, what are some things that you had a hard time adjusting to? What are some changes that are? I don't care what it is, spiritually, politically, economically. What are some changes that has happened in your life that you had a hard time adjusting to? We would like to know that. So, my last question is, and this is a very important question. I have a few ideas I'll share after you share yours. But my last question is that how can one adapt or adjust to change? I think you kind of answered that earlier a little bit about being flexible.
Yes, that's right. Flexibility. That is one way to adapt to it, and be open minded.
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, yes, be open minded in all situations, because I mean, we're not going to have things go our way all the time,
No.
and no, I mean, we wish we could, but I mean, there are going to be some times when we have to learn to adjust, and we may have to change course, change our plans, or go back to the drawing board, or what have
Yeah.
and all that causes change. So we have to be willing to, you know, like I said, we may have planned this or that, but it can be unplanned. So
Yeah.
we just have to be willing to change and go with the flow.
And like you said, being flexible and being open minded, that's very important
Yeah.
too. I got a few that I wrote here. What is it that's changing? And ask yourself, how does it benefit me? Number two, quiet your mind and minimize the noise in your life. Sometimes life is really noisy, and sometimes you just need a break. Um,
Yeah.
Number three, talk it out with someone. A lot of times, I don't know about you, but uh, when you go through a different change in your life that you're not accustomed to, sometimes it's good
Mm-hmm.
to talk it out with someone. Well, that's you getting ready to get married or getting ready to get divorced or you want to do a job career change or something like that. Sometimes it's good to call up a friend and say, hey, I'm kind of battling this. I'm kind of struggling. Sometimes talking to someone can help
Mm-hmm.
you to adjust to change. Number four, you've already mentioned this. Be open minded. You know, this doesn't mean you have to agree with every change that's being made, but if possible, if it works out for you, make the necessary adjustments that you need to make in regards to that change. Taryn, this was a wonderful discussion. What would be your last words to the audience tonight in regards to this subject?
Well, to anyone who is out there watching tonight, I just want you to know that when it comes to change, uh, many times it's not always easy. And in fact, change can be very difficult. And I know
Mhm.
because I've gone through numerous changes in my life over the years.
Yeah,
But when you come out on the other side of change and look back, then you will discover where perhaps what you went through that caused you to have to change, or whatever situation arose that brought about these changes, it all worked out for your good.
yeah.
And so that's what I would want our viewers to know tonight.
Okay, that's awesome. Taryn, I think it was a wonderful discussion.
I do too. I
Yeah,
really
it
enjoyed
was a
it.
wonderful discussion, and I appreciate you. I appreciate your friendship, and I want to ask everyone that's watching to share this program. We want to hear your thoughts about adapting to today's society. What were some things that you had to kind of make adjustments to? Even some, like I said, change is going to happen regardless. I
Yes,
was even thinking about this earlier, like um, unless you take some type of treatment or something, you can't just wake up and say, hair, I want you to stop growing. Or you can't look at your body and say, body, stop growing, stop changing.
no,
There are things in
mm,
our body that's going to change, that's going to evolve, that's going to grow without your permission.
it sure
And
is.
society operates in that same way. Like, whether we're going along with it or not, change is going to always be here. People are going to always evolve. Things are going to change. Like I said, technology,
That's right.
everything, the way things are today, like you
Hmm.
said, 15 years down the road, your school system is going to implement some new rules.
Yes.
You talk about cars earlier, the year 2035, they're looking at difference. I mean, you never know who's sitting back now looking at the future and saying, we're going to make change. People are always trying to make changes. Like some of them are not always great, but some of
No.
them could benefit us. So,
Uh,
um, but yeah, I appreciate your time on the show. And thank you so much for watching.
We hope you have enjoyed today's program. We want to connect with you. Visit us at facebook.com/The Brother Henry and You Show, or visit us on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Henry Harris 100. We're so grateful you tuned in today and hope you have a fantastic day.